tired. You know what I'm tired of, Jack?
I'll tell you what I'm tired of, Jack. I'm tired of your content faking, OnlyFans, girl pimping, super flexing, man baby face having, egotistical, self-righteous, disrespectful pile of heated up horse manure. You spread across the internet like the bubonic plague. You look like a 7-year-old, your face doesn't age. You make millions of dollars off of OnlyFans girls while paying them minimum wage. They'll do anything for clout, whatever it takes.
Glad it's over. I'm pretty sure that if you either have a misbehaving child or if you're under the age of 12 currently, you're familiar with this YouTuber, Packgod, a 5'1" white rapper YouTuber amassing a total of nearly 6 million subscribers by now. He specializes in the art of Discord packing, a form of roasting where two nerds on Discord mainly yell at each other with loud, crappy microphones while a couple of barking Rottweilers. This is the whole base of Packgod's videos, basically roasting. The modern generations of kids invented a new word for roasting and didn't even flinch. Somehow, ironically enough, Packgod has mastered the art of loud equals funny somehow, which gives me the instant Vietnam flashback tier PTSD, because I usually have the experience of cluelessly being in a Discord voice chat, then some random guy coming in and rapidly machine gunning the N-word multiple times before he leaves, and I have no recourse to kick him out. Yeah, great job, guys. Wow, I had this happen more than 2 months, mind you. Packgod's usual modus operandi is pick a victim, do a whole lot of introductory exposition, roll in a sponsor with a cringe-worthy rap, and then partake in an interview with his victim before unloading his ear-piercing roast and has been sort of blueballing his victim and his viewers for. The interview, in all honesty, might be respectable because sometimes he uncovers a sort of coping mechanism from some of his victims' alleged actions, but then his roast, loud as hell, filled to the brim with pop culture references that middle schoolers might minimally get impressed with, throws that out of the window completely and loses all sorts of respect he had remaining. Roasts that go like, oh, you look like the guy in Fortnite, or Roblox, you know, things that Gen Alpha might possibly get and giggle for a bit. I swear to Jim Flynn, Packgod is just basically Lanky Box if his audience was a tiny bit older and edgier. Packgod portrays this illusion of being an anime villain of sorts, a shadowy anime figure who brings justice in the form of his cringe-worthy roasts, which will be if Ronnie Radke never properly touched anyone, allegedly. Ironically enough, and I know anime fans will get me on this, his profile picture avatar that he uses in his videos turns out to be King from One Punch Man, a guy famous for being a socially inept coward.
I'm just an unemployed 29-year-old otaku loser!
And I know it's really fitting because Packgod, as well, likes to pick on low-hanging fruit, and I swear to God, he's a good farmer. Furries, women with OnlyFans, Discord moderators, Discord e-girls, kids maybe, even some more questionable victims, they'll mostly sit there and have to process whatever Packgod is blabbing in his roast, which is absolute nonsense. And let me tell you, he's got a rap career, and while I was writing the video listening to some of his tracks, I found them to be abysmal dog shit. Hey, Packgod, Soulja Boy and Drake called, they want their bars back. But you know he wouldn't be complete dog shit without the extra sauce. Fakey videos, because Packgod stretches and fakes a lot of his videos. It's also convenient that he not only picks deliberately his targets, but also promotes them, and also has to cover his ass with the tagline in the description, "This is not real bullying. This is for entertainment purposes only." Truly, a man that lives to the standards of the anime character he's basing himself off of. His videos are staged in a similar vein to that of professional wrestling, at least in some way, where the fight is prearranged, the events are premeditated, and the winner has already been decided. I'm sorry, Commander Sterling, for breaking your magic up, but somebody had to explain it to some people. Sorry, but Santa Claus isn't real, okay? I'm pretty sure this criticism of Packgod and more already come out of a video by a fellow content creator, Flacefire, who's done an extensive roast of Packgod himself, breaking his facade down and revealing how much of a sore loser Packgod is. You know, what Packgod reminds me of? It's like one of those your old YouTube days pranksters out there, or the fake trolls like Platoon and Lick Me, where everything is staged, the sort of shenanigans are prearranged, and the results are already being premeditated and decided, and they're all cringe as hell. I guess we'll never get rid of the usual fake trolls and pranksters and similar who always find a way to rise to the top of the crop, because if their videos were genuine, no one of these prepubescent squeaker kids will care enough to sub to them and give them money. Welcome to YouTube. But hey, that's just the reality of someone who's already overprivileged enough to social ladder their way into building rather meaningful connections with enough already successful content creators and build a brainless audience of angsty kids. I can honestly tell how it must be feel personally for someone like Packgod. I mean, I'm not successful enough to get him into their shoes, but that must be sad as shit. After all, we're all just bound to the spectacle of the fake shadows, like an allegorical Plato allegory of the cave sitting there handcuffed, forever watching an illusion of what's reality in front of our faces, without being able to look back at reality itself. So, no, I don't like Packgod. I am too old for this shit. Oh, whoa, millennial me, who's more concerned about millennial thoughts like, how am I going to pay rent in the following month instead of leeching off of my dad's house? I think there are better and more grown-up philosophical questions or spectacles of sorts than Packgod himself for me. Not that I want to invoke the wrath of Packgod, given that there is a minimal chance he'll see this video, see I'm sort of an easy target, and then Donkey throws on me on a Discord packing session for my further humiliation to his audience of squeakers. Not because I'm afraid of him, but because, let's face it, I'm completely immune to middle school insults with Fortnite and Roblox references. But it's just because I know this sort of unoriginal insult it's gonna throw at me that sound Kiwi forms adjacent, which usually go like, ha ha, she eating the poo-poo. No, I don't usually like to waste my time with that. I have better things to do, and that by itself reminds me of a certain Maximilian who might already have sounded like a deal with the devil itself. Besides, there's nothing to pull out of that that's beneficial for me, because either way, his fans will use it as an excuse to spam me suicide threats and similar on my channels and whatnot. I don't want to associate with that, nor will they be able to pay me anything I offer even to get that Goon Fund. What are they gonna do? Pay €5 a month with their mom's credit card? No. Ew. I just prefer adults in my land. Thank you. I just like to admit that Packgod is just a mixed bag between being awkwardly funny, like occasionally listening to Following Reverse's nonsense, and painfully cringe, like realizing Ronnie Radke is behind that band. So, at this point, that's my Packgod roast. If you're not an adult, feel free to leave a hate comment and just leave. I don't care. Don't worry too much about the length of this video, because that's just like advanced algebra for y'all. Too complicated for your developing brains. I'll see ya in the next video. Bye! Okay, I think they're gone now. If you've been on YouTube for a reasonable amount of time, and I know you've already been like I have, I know that Packgod isn't the only YouTuber who's LARPing as an evil anime villain here on this platform. Hell, it's not even the first, and we have evidence of that which dates back even to the inception of the internet and beyond to testify about that. Packgod, I think the goth and punk cultural folks would like to have a talk with you. It's easy to roast Packgod for the same criticisms of roasts that everyone else applied for edge pros out there since the your days of YouTube, but you'll notice as well that what if there are more Packgods out there who display evil for financial or social capital? I have preferred to avoid minors in the viewership of this video, except for those poor unfortunate souls who decided to stick around out for curiosity at least, to leave the room, because Packgod himself, alongside many others like him, posed bigger philosophical, moral, and ethical questions about what does it mean to display evil for profit in the society. Because this is not a video about just Packgod, oh no. You know, in a typical video essay fashion, that there's usually an opener to a much bigger, broader topic at hand. So I'm going to use Packgod once again as a vehicle for a much bigger philosophical question. You fell for my trap again! Have you seen the length of this video? Oh, poor unfortunate souls. evil is being normalized more down now than ever. And I don't mean this in the same way Christians have been posting this fact on YouTube.com, as far as I know, but you see it not just with Packgod, but also with other more successful, powerful personalities. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Feijóo, Isabel Ayuso down in Madrid. These just happen to use the display of evil and other morally egregious antics for massive political, financial, and social gain. And Packgod, albeit to a lesser degree, is also one of them. The only apparent problem that happens lately is that this is a common recurrence more on the far-right and right-leaning politics, but it seems it happens everywhere, not just in politics. So let's just unpack the Packgods of the whole of society before the kids come back. That's one hell of a singer. But first, let's get quick to the funny map wall. Ooh. Okay, now that the kids are gone, I think you should know already what Packgod himself has a very, very colorful fan base of prepubescent and edgy kids, believing they're cool for watching his whole spectacle facade of being an evil anime villain of sorts. And if you've been watching carefully, it's a common occurrence on the internet that kids always see being badass or evil as something cool. There's always an audience for Leafy or Packgod, or even an audience for, I don't know, Maddox back then. But in any case, it shows as well that children are as easily manipulable. Let's not talk about what that says about our society. This facade of being badass or evil, sadly though, gives Packgod a social and economic benefit, or rather capital and social capital, because why not? We're communists after all. We're like using Marxist terms all day. No one seems to be stopping us. As I said before though, this display of evil is for capitalistic benefits is similarly a tactic used by a lot of people, as well as Elon Musk more recently with his Nazi salute and the sort, as the thumbnail of this video implies, which seems very, very evident by itself. This recent and more importantly researching phenomenon amongst those aligned with the far-right, or rather with Gooey forms adjacent people of sorts, is more importantly described by one of the Spanish contemporaries. Malismo by Moro Entrialgo, a fellow bassman. Let me do the dance of my people. Moro Entrialgo is well known for being a Spanish cartoonist responsible for the Ángel se Fija series of comic strips published in the satirical Spanish magazine El Jueves. A lot of this content of Ángel se Fija is Moro's critical point of view on the diversity of trends of the times he was living in before and now. And as much as some of these predictions came out to be wrong, more than those views, and even nearly all of them, are right, hitting right there on the bullseye. Because Mr. Entrialgo has an accurate critical point of view on things that are going on and in not just society in Spain, but also in politics and so on, in the Western world at least. And this time he's so absolutely bold, he didn't even make a comic book this time. Instead, he wrote a book, no drawings or anything, about this recent phenomenon going on. I wish I could be able to afford or get a copy of the book, but sadly, I'm in big savings mode. This said Malismo, or Melism as we're going to translate it as for the sake of your sanity, has many, many definitions, but the seemingly official one that Moro has chosen for this is a display of evil for propagandistic benefits, which includes things such as confessing vile acts with the goal of having profit, playing with sinful concepts for economic gain, or other similar things. It even includes portraying oneself as badass, something that Packgod and I have in common. You'll also find occasions where, at least in Madrid or any other region of Spain, we hint to this sort of Maoism of sorts by playing with simple concepts for the branding restaurants or bars that have names like Pibon or Canalla, or even Gula, with this last one translated as gluttony. I'm pretty sure as of late that you can also find similar names for establishments in your local area, for which, if you do, leave a comment of which I'm genuinely curious. Moro in his book distinguishes at least two different grades of rate Maoism into, one of which is the severity of which we can range from the sinful names of restaurants in Madrid to the atrocities made by IDF Zionist soldiers in Telegram groups. Severity which is pretty much based on how vile or morally egregious their actions are. This one is the most obvious of them because it's measured in intensity like you will measure hot sauce in Scoville units. The other grade in which malism is measured, however, is the scope of the size or the circle these acts are done. This can tell the difference from something that's being done from the sake of our WhatsApp group chats or our middle school class friends to something that's done for the sake of the mentality of the public opinion worldwide. In both of these terms, Packgod will be considered small potatoes in severity, compared to something like Elon or Steve Bannon's Nazi salute, kind of like what's going on in a typical Madrid restaurant name, given that he's just doing the appearance of an evil anime villain persona. But his scope is similar to that of Elon almost, given that he aims to get the public opinion from the entirety of the YouTube community's previous audience. In a similar vein, there's Mr. Beast, who treats contestants like absolute dog shit for monetary profit. Severity is sort of towards high if we're talking even about Geneva Convention violations, but the scope is similarly very high because, let's admit, Mr. Beast is very, very greedy. And I mean, speaking of which, this is clearly more evident due to Elon Musk's Nazi salute. He's the richest person in the entire planet, and by that, the most famous. But he's the most hated person on the planet still. And I hate to be a doomsayer for this, but this has bigger, worse implications as of now, because are the Nazi salutes really gonna inspire a whole generation of high schoolers to do the same just to do Nazi salutes to look cool in class now? The severity and scope of both Elon's and Packgod's malisms are different, that's for sure, as well as Elon's other actions that resemble that of a Third Reich of sorts, which again target the public opinion at least, but turns out that like Packgod's unbearable cringe, it is still malism the same. And heck, wasn't there like a whole BDSM fetish based on Nazis back in the 80s or 90s or something? I'm pretty sure there are still some dumb femmes wearing Nazi-like uniforms against the sub-doggies or something like that. Hey, at least I assume now you're all now the grown-ups here in this room, so I don't know, maybe confirm that and look that up. It's no coincidence either that a lot of people who used to believe in a diversity of conspiracy theories like chemtrails, UFOs, Hyperborea, Atlantis, and so on and so forth, started recently turning into the far right, while a lot of far right people or far right adjacent people started believing in certain similar conspiracy theories like the Hyperborea, the Kalergi plan, or such as conspiracy theories surrounding the 2030 agenda, and so on. But it doesn't just apply to right-wing people, sadly. This malism has been also permeating our lefty culture as well. Because of things of dunking someone on Twitter for clout or saying things like Nazi tears or even the whole punk or anti-system aesthetic as well, these are malisms as well. The display of bad or evil for a personal benefit. Malismo reflects not just how wrong society is, sadly, but also how moral me or all of us are merely part of that wrong society. These malisms are also deeply ingrained in our culture's root that it is essentially unavoidable. It is even part of our everyday modern lives. At one point in my life, and I hate to say this, but I had to say this still, I need to blame myself even for this, because this whole badass or evil attitude was similarly being used by normal or certain normal people like me as an anti-system weapon. And let's face it, we've all done it at the point of our lives. But it turns out now that the tables have turned when rulers, both right and left, use the same anti-system weapon against those below them, and so on. There's even a main reason why there's a lot of blue checkmark trolls on Twitter again. Like, they want to get a lot of unwarranted attention by saying a bunch of stupid shit or harassing someone in particular, which will be later monetized based on tweet impressions thanks to TwitX's blue checkmark monetization policies. They get a paycheck for this. I'm not fucking kidding. Malism is universal, sadly. Left or right, up or down, in or out, you're going to find malism everywhere, but just happens to be recently more prevalent, like I said, on far-right circles because their scope is higher than just a Packgod aiming to be the most famous Discord Packgod on YouTube, or us dunking Nazis on Twitter. They already aim for the whole of public opinion in comparison to the most of us. Iron Maiden best puts it, only the good die young. This mannerism has been going on since the inception of modern culture, as testified by many people who read Marvel and Triago's book. It even exists in literature, film, music, games. The whole of culture itself has someone being normalized and promoted the idea that being bad, evil, or badass is cool, and that will reap you a lot of benefits. And hey, isn't there already a whole lot of successful billionaires like Timo Gobbles himself, Jeff Bezos? But honestly, is this anything new? No, obviously not. Like I said, this same malism has at roots as an anti-system sentiment. The concept of being evil or bad for massive gains doesn't seem to be a new phenomenon, because as far as I'm concerned, there might be parallels with culture that are earlier to this whole new phenomenon. Packgods like Packgod again have existed way back before Packgod was a thing, and I don't even get me started on obvious Nazis. There's a whole ancient subculture rooting for the bad guy, and this dates back to the inception of modern culture even. But why is there a god in the Packgod? I think it's time to figure it. Okay, little caveat before we go with this section. I know someone might point somewhere either in the comment section or anywhere else that me, because of being a Western person in Europe, I have a skewed cultural understanding of what's good and evil. And I'm fully aware that there are some variables depending on the culture you're looking at. Obviously, I'm a small being from Europe. I will never understand the cultural variables of good and evil in the Middle East or the East in general or anywhere else in general. And if I were to explain all of those conundrums depending on all cultural variables regarding good and evil, I'd be here for way too longer, and nobody ain't got time for that. I mean, this is a YouTube video essay and not like a boring ass sociology masterclass. But you gotta understand that, like, there's cultural variables in the understanding of what's good or evil. There's also constants and variables. It's like Bioshock Infinite somehow. So for the sake of brevity, and I know I don't want to drag this video for too unnecessarily long, which, by the way, this video is already long, we'll just assume the cultural constants that I know as a Western person of what's good and evil, and assume those are the universal idea of what's good and what's evil, because let's face it, I don't live in a country ruled by Islam, or by Buddhism, or even by the cult of Kali to know much of anything else. So with that in mind, let's go back to the already scheduled programming. Being sympathetic for a villain like Packgod or Elon Musk is nothing new, because it shows especially how in modern culture we just started to blur the line between good and evil. After all, there's tiny glimpses of humanity of sorts in our common fiction villains or even real-life villains. Elon Musk wouldn't be the villain he is without his many narcissistic insecurities going on in his mind after realizing that money can buy you a good reputation, despite the great privilege of being born in a rich apartheid family in South Africa. And I'm pretty sure Packgod has reached to this point not just because of personal image or branding, but also because he feels insecure about whether being the nice guy will not give him as much success on YouTube as being the bad guy. There's a more than interesting video by Lemon, Sympathy for the Villain, which explores our relativity with the concept of good and evil and how that helps us have a human connection to certain villains like Anton Chigurh, Zuko, Joker, Syndrome. These are obviously human, and what helps them have their humanity is that they have a background mostly in that precedes them. Zuko wouldn't be the villain for a while in The Last Airbender without his past attempts at redeeming himself. Syndrome wouldn't be the main villain of The Incredibles if it wasn't because of his backstory, the same way Joker is just what completes Batman's pursuit for justice. And you wanna know a certainly funny film? The first Joker film from 2019 or so is an example of how we can form a relatable bond to the character of the Joker. A character so reviled as the main antagonist of Batman that is present in nearly every installment of the Cape Crusader's career. Joker killing off Murray in the first Joker movie might have been the cathartic deep desire in all of us of what we could do with an establishment that puts a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash. He got what he apparently deserved. In a way, Employment's video centers around the idea of the yin and yang, an old Chinese concept of morality that is ever present even in nature. Good and evil always contradict each other, but also have a piece of the other inside them. In acts of evil like, say, Elon Musk or Netanyahu, there's always certain justification. Netanyahu justifies this somewhat as a constant fight against Hamas, even though he's massacring millions of Palestinians in the process. And Elon is so ever entrapped in justifications of his leader Adolf. Delusional, definitely, but they thought at some point that they had will with their actions. And you know what they say, the way to hell is paved with good intentions. They did morally reprehensible things, but let's not forget, it's a tad bit silly to think something is extremely evil or extremely good. It's funny to how we often paint things as either black or white completely when there are obviously a whole lot of shades of grey in between, as if we are all oblivious to the concept of the yin and yang. One of the films that portrayed Hitler as a somewhat weak human figure is Downfall. Everyone remembers it with what that famous Hitler rage scene everyone meme about back then. Hitler did really horrid things, and I don't plan to defend him here. After all, he's a fucking Nazi. But somewhere in his brain, he had this justification to commit the horrible acts he committed. Nationalism, and by extension fascism, doesn't exist without a national identity to defend as good against an external force that's evil. And it's no strange how many people even today identify themselves with the horrible acts of Hitler had committed, as if that was justified by them with a fight against said external evil. When I was in the alt-right, and believe me, this really passed through my head, I was having the blind idea that I would like to improve society somewhere, like I do today being the CEO of Antifa. Although the main problem here is that it is misguided by a blind hatred of minorities. To some degree, I care about humanity itself, at least the white-passing one, for the same humanistic principles that I have today, but with a coat of fascism on top. Like Elon or Hitler or Netanyahu had my own justifications back then in my head, and it seems evident that by now our concepts of good and evil are pretty much subjective. This is why I preface this section with that bit of a monologue about cultural variables and constants. Employment's video prefaces that our understanding of good and evil is rooted in our cultural beliefs, whether they're religious, social, or political. That the concept of good and evil has been always taught to us from our early infancy even. But I think I'm getting too ahead of myself. Going ahead back to Packgod, I know a lot of prepubescent Packgod fanboys are not going to hear this, not like hearing it, but a lot of the Sigma male granted characters that they usually adore to praise have the other sort of brushstrokes inside them, giving them way more depth than they actually believe they have. Joker is not limited to the binary of good and evil. Joker has his mysterious justifications behind blowing up a hospital or turning Harvey Dent into Two-Face. As much as you like to proclaim, Patrick Bateman is Sigma male, W, woman L. Sadly, there's more depth into a character like Patrick Bateman in the entirety of American Psycho. For instance, Patrick Bateman is a psychopath who will unregretfully kill anyone for higher pay, hence why the movie is called American Psycho. Ironically enough, and this seems to be clearly evident, Patrick Bateman's psychotic actions are glorified by a whole plethora of internet users such as the Sigma male TikTok edits and other things. And it's no wonder, especially now, how the alt-right glorifies the psychotic actions of Bateman in the film. I guess cruelty is the point, isn't it? Packgod, the same way, is self-glorified through that same sense of Sigma male grandeur that any internet evil anime villain is all about. He might even sell you the illusion that he's a Chad always packing with W's on anyone he dares to roast in his videos. But like I said before, he has most likely more insecurities about himself than you think. It's no wonder why he has to hide his wide 5'1" rapper face from the public with his anime villain persona. But we do go back with the same old question. Why is this sort of malice or evil being glorified or normalized? Because in a basic common sense, nobody would like to do morally reprehensible things for like cyberbullying or genocide. They were still inclined to do it even for personal gain. Well, remember what I said about the yin and the yang that was theorized in Employment's video? That old Chinese myth has a lot in common with other sorts of mythologies as well, including our Christian one in Europe, where we've been taught there's always a struggle between good and evil. To simply paint a character as purely evil and nothing else just makes them forgettable, like what happened with Maleficent in Disney at some degree. But in writing, what helps connect the villain with the audience is to establish a transformation from friend to fiend, like Employment's video states. However, morality is really complex and really, it is an abstraction only as we humans understand at some minimal degree. There's no other species in the animal kingdom that can fully grasp the concept of morality aside from what their own survival instincts. But what if our morality is just an animalistic instinct? Like I said, morality or morals in general is entirely based on each culture, and like there are constants, there are also cultural variables depending on which culture bases its spiritual or religious writing entirely. A word that famously rhymes with evil is devil, and the devil is usually in the religious text the antithesis of what's morally righteous, but like any villain, the devil serves to complete God and Christianity as a whole, and is the one keeping the whole machinery running. What some of us might see as evil is notably seen as good by others, and it really depends on the cultural variables of each place in the world. It's no wonder what terrorists or other far-right charlatans consider we do as evil is considered as good by the LGBT community, or what the Real Madrid considers Barca does is as evil is considered good by the Barca fans. And I think a prime example of this that dates back to the Renaissance era is no more than Italian writer Niccolo Machiavelli. Mamma mia, tutti Machiavelli! I'm sorry. Machiavelli is a famous historic diplomat and writer from the Italian Renaissance. His writing is peculiar even, giving to his work in books like The Prince. Most likely, he's also a renowned noble as part of the Italian aristocracy. It's noticeable that what might have been good for Machiavelli might have been bad or evil for others, given to his peculiar writings and especially the way he writes. This was evident because way later, in 1955, Richard Christie influenced L. Guys twisted his writings into a new psychological trait called Machiavellianism, one of the famous dark triad of personality alongside psychopathy and narcissism. Richard Christie was set out to study the thinking and actions of political ideologues and religious extremists, and by that time there was so much writing about this on those who followed the organizations, but very little on those who led them. This was until Christie was reminded of having read Machiavelli's writings as an undergraduate, especially from The Prince and the Discourses of Livy, and by 1970, after testing in final results, they published their book Studies in Machiavellianism. A lot of the items of his psychometric are based on Machiavelli's prose style. Look, I don't want to get into the particularities of Machiavellianism itself, but like I said before, this is a prime example how one's justifications in the head for certain actions can be seen as good in there, but as evil by others. It's all in the head. I think it's even clearly evident when Machiavelli wrote, and I quote, "If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance needs not to be feared." But why is the good evil so subjective, and why evil, while reviled by some, is glorified by others? Well, in the words of Pearl Jam, it's evolution, baby! And like it, we're the first mammals to wear pants. It's obvious for by now that this subjective concept of good and evil is based on our evolutionary biology, and Employment's video has even hinted about it for a bit. The very inception of mankind has always looked to justify calling certain predators evil across a diversity of different mythologies. And you know what? Snakes are often associated with Western cultures as evil because they're somewhat of a predator who poisons his victims and kills them. Now, however, humans are more advanced and we nearly have no predators to us left, so we have to make our own make-believe predators like ones were written by H.P. Lovecraft, the fear of the unknown, which doesn't understand our human mortal concepts of morality and lurks from the deep confines of the cosmos. This is why aliens are such a prevalent villain in science fiction, especially the ones who happen to invade Earth because they do not grasp our own concepts of morality. Like we have predators usually, we have our own needs as a species, and I don't want to bring on the Maslow hierarchy of needs here, but I think our concepts of good and evil are deeply rooted in our physiological needs as well as a species. After all, aren't we mammals supposed to respond to basic urges and instincts? You and me, baby, ain't nothing like mammals, so let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. Actually, we're still mammals. This is all rooted in human and general primate lizard brain psychology even, when we're born. Usually we base ourselves on what's good or bad based on our own gut feeling, aside of what our parents or other external influences teach us. Whether it's our hearts pump faster or anything like that, our brains work like that to associate certain things as good or evil, let's say. Oh baby, this is where the science comes, and I'm pretty sure you're as excited as I am. This is just in layman's terms, at least according to a study by Jens Kjeldgaard Christensen from the Aarhus University in Denmark, work of our own evolution as a species. This is ever so present in primates as well, because as we like to know, primates are kind of similar to humans in some way or another. In fact, humans evolved from primates. Chimpanzees have been shown to have evolved more competitive against each other, where males are the dominant sex but are more aggressive against females and others. On the other hand, bonobos are the opposite. The females are the more dominant sex above males, but have shown to be more erotic in kind and even more altruistic. A lot of the human species as we evolved from primates like the chimpanzees or the bonobos, well, it's kind of from a different species of primates, but that's besides the point, have developed our moral compasses around not just our environment we had to survive in, but also our gut feeling or chemical brain reactions based on said environment. Often because, and you guessed it, we like to survive in a world with finite resources. Although the set limit of resources in our planet as a whole has led our species to not just be altruistic, but to also be hyper-competitive with our own species even. So that's why wars happen a lot throughout our entire history. But then why is it so appealing to be evil? Well, because like Machiavelli and this Machiavellian gang, we become import hyper-competitive species. There's already a finite amount of earthly resources in this grown planet, and we're too many people here. You wanna also know why we're also more inclined to do evil? Dopamine. Dopamine overrides any goodwill because, again, like it was clearly evident in our evolution as a species, our vices are generating more of it, making us less likely to control our animalistic urges. And we still think we're above mammals, eh? I guess we're just the first mammals to wear pants. Machiavelli's alleged complete disregard for containing his own vices and his writing money of evidence kind of feels like it responds to the animalistic urges we usually have as mammals or primates. After all, he's a privileged noble with serfs under him, most likely, and all has by then is his dopamine jacked up to oblivion. But given this evolutionary biology, it's no wonder why since the inception of our own species, we have created mythologies and narratives from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Lord of the Rings, which always show that evil and good are inseparable aspects of reality. The dark side of reality appears like this to be a relic of pre-human times, and has permeated a lot in our known fiction until now. Stories about the struggle of light and darkness, a great French Revolution inspired a whole wave of terror inside the fiction of the 18th and 19th century Gothic novels. David Lynch's Twin Peaks, showcasing evil as an aspect of nature itself. Rest in peace, David Lynch, by the way. even the boys and current marble slop. It's even especially evident that these concepts explore a lot of what's explained in Employment's video. With the concept of the yin and yang, it definitely goes back there. But I think we tend to forget a core problem with this. The root of why evil is being normalized today, as evidenced with Elon Musk or hell, Packgod himself. Capitalism. Let's face it still, there's a finite amount of resources at least on this known planet. There are 8 billion people there competing with each other for those at least point. So might as well do anything and everything to stand out of the crowd of, I don't know, 8 gazillion peoples. This kind of ties back to the collective Machiavellianism of sorts, let's say. But this is why there's so much power imbalance and inequality in the world. Because while some of us control our animalistic urges and play nice, others stomp on us more than we'll ever do and rise to the top in the meantime. This, honey, is the Machiavellianism of the new age. And because of this, a few rich and powerful people have risen to the very top of our society ever since the inception of the agricultural revolution. Let's start by a very evident example. Elon Musk. As by now, by the time I was writing this video, Elon Musk is the king of the USA alongside his lackey Donald Trump. Elon Musk runs a brand new government agency called Doge. Doge is preaching above all else about efficiency, but as much as it preaches about efficiency, it is at the expense of causing cruelty to marginalized groups. Let's not forget that Elon Musk is really incompetent at running it alongside his other lackeys like big balls. But sure will probably jack up the government's profits even more, even though it's been shown it just doesn't work. Because again, they're really incompetent buffoons more than just the Bush administration. But a lot of people that were crushed under the same boat will be crushed a lot more. It's really the effect of treating a whole society as a business. And the Doge administration that will most likely follow during this remaining 4 years of presidency will show that eventually Elon Musk will profit even more. And believe me, that his man's dopamine thirst will never be quenched. So again, in the wise words of Stephanie Sterling, cruelty is the point. This very system of capitalism in which Elon Musk happily exploits government agency for massive profits and gains, doing all sorts of horrible things in the process, is based on these animalistic urges making us exploit people and be exploited at the same time. There's a whole business of exploiting people's dopamine levels as well through the means of gooner slop, instant gratification nonsense, which jacks up our dopamine up as well as soon as we reap its benefits. Packgod, for the same reason, is jacking not only his viewers' dopamine with these psychotic edits and roads that make you go deaf and blind, but also jacks his own reaping his said ad revenue or social capital from all of that. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Capitalism itself perpetuates this Ouroboros type cycle to profit only a handful of grossly rich people on top of the rest. And it turns out that none of these grossly rich parasites are ever satisfied with anything. They will never be satisfied. They will always want more and more. Hence the myth of perpetual growth that investors are craving for in the economy. Why so many companies enshittify themselves for maximum profit. Why so many corporations lay off thousands of employees to rack up millions more in stock market evaluation and bonuses for the executive class. It's why even this malism, like Maureen Triago describes, is perpetuated. It is why politicians and billionaires like Elon Musk, Trump, Steve Bannon, and so on intensify even more and more their cruelty to others exponentially. Their voters and sycophants even crave more of it, and so they themselves, these billionaires, executive politicians, they crave even more of the benefits they reap from all of that. It's a vicious cycle that demands more and more, up to the point where harassing someone with a N-words on Discord or making them nearly eat shit on camera on Discord while recording them without their consent is mild in comparison. I will quote Jean-Jacques Rousseau once again, but I think you already heard it before when I was in a Bourgeois cemetery, and I think you know now and get the point by now. Meanwhile, the goody-goody choo-choos of the world who dare not to do evil have to languish being stomped on by these dumb psychopaths and parasites, unable to compete with them because our morality is a double-bladed sword, at the same time of allowing us to have a moral compass to at least know what's good or bad. It crushes us being unable to do any meaningful action that can at least make these people in power afraid of us. And the people who actually do are relegated to a minority of Luigis who just happen to be heavily accidental on purpose. It's depressing. I know you're angry about this. Oh, I know, hon. At this point, it should make you so. I am angry at the system right now. And I know a lot of you also are. In fact, most people with autism like me have a heavy moral compass because we, like many others, are often a marginalized group, at least. That we unfortunately or unfortunately have it as a strong sense of justice. We don't like seeing other people being exploited by people above them. We don't like seeing injustice, nor to us nor to anybody else. So it's natural that seeing mean people commit malisms like these for massive capital, social or otherwise, at the expense of the suffering of others, for us is jarring to see. It's sort of complicated to unravel a whole system like this because it requires a whole lot of cooperation and organizing from the entirety of the planet as a whole. And then getting that as well is also complicated. Not everyone agrees with each other. And I believe it's a part of human nature to disagree. If the human species were an homogeneous mass, what's the freaking point? But it seems like being goody-goody two-shoes is pretty ineffective in this system. And at the same time, there's a lot of pent-up anger in the populace, and fear, and rage especially, because this system keeps betraying our well-being just so a few assholes get another private jet or a judge in exchange of our suffering. A lot of them heroes of society, if not completely invisibilized by the said system, are punished severely just because of the interest of a rich fuck up, where they are dictating what's good or bad depending on what is more likely to give him a stimulus check. Luigi Mangione, and I know you might disagree with some of his political views, but it's shown that his pent-up anger at the general populace has for the CEOs, the politicians, the system, can be something that can effectively make the rulers and oligarchs afraid. And in the words of Hugo Weaving, quote, in V for the Vendetta, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. CEOs happily work us to death, tell us to own a home, a family, and die old, or go to the army and return home in a box, and put out their names and addresses to the public expecting nothing to happen to them. But one must wonder if any of these CEOs and politicians are really afraid of a bullet in their head. Look, I don't want to give you ideas like that in case the FBI is watching, but does this mean we need more heroes? Probably. But what we need even more is anti-heroes saving the day, ready to pull off these same mannerisms against a system that uses them to further perpetuate the status quo. As a result of the Republican Party's victory with Trump and Musk and their incompetence, it shows that despite no one coming to save the US populace, a lot of people in the US are truly unhappy and are willing to risk their safety and lives to protest and sabotage this new age fascist system by any means necessary. It's incredible to believe, but fascism really seems to be a really unpopular ideology to vote for, and I wonder what that means for capitalism itself. There's more power to the whole of the people who can protest these things and are able to flip cars and kill CEOs and politicians in Roblox than these handful of rich assholes rolling at the top. Hell, if the French Revolution has shown us something, it definitely looks like that. I alone don't have the capacity to do something about it, but there's some hope that a collective of people who watch this video might actually do. I'm just here, like I said, to educate a whole generation of people that watch this and help you give the breadcrumbs to understand what you can do about this sort of thing. These types of videos, fortunately, have a very positive impact on the class consciousness of the general populace. And true, I might not be able to turn a Trump supporter into a radical Antifa super soldier, but even the Trump supporters just happen to be dwindling as they are also being crushed by their oligarchs, realizing slowly that they as well are being conned. I can't really alone do much but to fix the complicated issue of capitalism or fascism in a 1 hour video of sorts, as anyone does. But I really hope by sharing this knowledge that at least one person can at least do something. After all, I think the first step of this is recognizing that this belongs deep down to our own mammal instincts. Like I said, and unlike other animals in the animal kingdom, we are humans that have the capacity to rationalize and decide what to do with a rational thought and that very ability. Like I said many times before, it is now the right time to organize and protest. Do not let this aforementioned displays of evil that come from these assholes make you afraid. Be angry, rightfully so, and say it out loud. Don't be afraid to say it out loud. Packgod is cringe, like Elon Musk. Thank you for watching.